So Unity was founded on prayer and meditation. It is the reason that we exist. It was started as a prayer ministry in the Fillmore's home, where they would come together and they would pray every day at the same time, and they would receive letters from people all over the world, really, and then they would hold these people in prayer. And from this prayer movement, it grew into the Unity movement, the New Thought religion that it is today. So we were founded on prayer, we were founded on meditation, and it continues to be the basis and the basic of our church, of our Unity movement, of the Association of Churches Worldwide, and it's part of our core value. Our fifth Unity principle says that we must walk our talk. So in other words, we can't just talk about prayer, we need to pray. We can't just talk about meditation, we need to meditate. We can't just talk about prosperity, we have to practice the principles of prosperity. We can't just talk about the law of mind action, we need to practice that. We can't just talk about beholding the Christ, we need to do that. So it's one of the things that has drawn me to Unity. It is one of the things that has kept me in Unity for over 30 years, is that it's kind of like a laboratory. You know, it's kind of like this experimental place where we get to try out these Unity principles. And we do them in service, we do them in classes, and it's fun to watch how they affect people's lives, you know, how we're able to change and move forward through that. So in 1960, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, remember him? He was the yogi that was with the Beatles back in the 60s. He predicted that if 1% of the population practiced transcendental meditation, and I'm going to go on to say any form of meditation, that it would produce measurable improvements in the quality of life for the whole population. And the phenomenon was called the Maharishi effect. And he believed that if 1% of the population meditated, that it would uplift everyone. And you know, when we look at Scripture, what did Jesus say? Don't hide your light under a bushel. If you hide your light, if you put your light high on a stand, then it will lift up all men and women to you. And so that's kind of the concept of that not only as we improve ourselves, but as we pray, as we meditate, we lift not only ourselves, but we lift others to us. So in 1993, the TM organization launched an experiment asking people around the world to meditate, specifically to lower the crime rate in Washington, D.C. at the time, which was the murder capital of the world. And so they asked TM people primarily to do their TM meditation, and they actually found a maximum decrease in crime by 23% in the last week of the experiment. Before that, the police chief said the only way you're going to get that high of a decrease is if you have a major snowstorm. So, you know, that was like 25 years ago, and, you know, not a whole lot, as far as I know, has been done on a larger scale since then, until today. So, Troy Reicherter, I hope I'm saying your name right, if you would just kind of stand up for a sec so everybody can see who he is. Yay, Troy. So Troy contacted me a couple months ago, and he said, you know, he referred to this experiment. He goes, you know, I'd like to try this again, and I'd like to try it in Seattle. And so he's been going around talking to churches, meditation groups, and getting people to sign on. And the idea is that from June 1st until September, the end of September, I assume, that he's asking people to meditate with the idea of lowering the crime rate in Seattle, you know. And so the question is, so how do you measure any of this stuff, right? I mean, that's the big question. So he's created an app. So the idea is that you would sign on to your app when you're meditating, specifically, hopefully, sending prayer energy to Seattle. And then there's a way to measure how many people are meditating and for how long. And then they'll compare that with the statistics that we get from the police department and whatever about crime. So are you guys into this? Does this sound like a plan? Yes. All right, so the Android app is up and running. And It's in your bulletin. It's hhresearch.org, and the Apple one will be up by June 1st. Is that right? Should be next week. Can you not just go to the App Store to get it? Do you have to go to hhresearch.org to get it?
I guess it's on the App Store, but there's a direct link from
There's a direct link. So this is new for Troy. He just is following his guidance. He's never done anything like this before. You have no idea what you're doing, but you do. You're following your guidance. So I really want to support him in what he's doing. And my feeling is that as we participate in this, that I think it's going to grow throughout the summer. And if you have, friends that you know that meditate and pray, invite them to be a part of it. Because I think this is, again, it's Unity's fifth principle. It's like we're not just talking about this stuff. We're actually going to put it into practice and see if it has results and that can be measured. So I'd like to build a case for meditation and silence. Again, it is one of our basic principles, but even Jesus needed to get away from the crowds to seek solitude and silence. And I think we can all agree that Jesus is probably one of the more enlightened beings on this planet that has ever lived. And yet, when you flip through Scripture, you can see over and over again how often Jesus took time to rest in the silence. And I'm just going to run through them. So in Mark chapter 135, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. In Luke chapter 5:15, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. In Mark 6:31, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, Jesus said to his disciples, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Matthew 14, after Jesus had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountainside by himself to pray, and when evening came, he was still there alone. So there's more than that, of course, there's a lot more than that. But we can see that even as enlightened as Jesus was, that he took time away to connect with divine presence. He took the time to nurture that relationship with Spirit, with God. He took time to listen, to recharge, and to connect. It's in the 10 Commandments, right? To remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. When God created the earth, it was on the seventh day he did what? He rested, and it was holy. The Sabbath day is about being quiet. So, if Jesus, who was extremely enlightened, needed to take time away, how about you? How about you? Is your life not busy? Are you not, especially in the world we live in today with the 24/7 and all the things that we have to do? And we may say that, you know what, the Sabbath, the silence, it's not that important. I can deal with it later. But again, as an example, Jesus showed us how important it is to rest. How many of you take a Sabbath day, an actual Sabbath day where you rest and you don't? Annie does. Tom does. For me, Monday is my Sabbath day, and I try not to drive or have any appointments, make phone calls. I try to keep a day that is simply quiet, that is a day of the Sabbath, is a day of silence, because it's there that we come back to our core and that we're able then to recharge. So Jesus also said this about meditation. He said, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is sound, your whole body is filled with light. I think he's referring to the third eye here. And we know that as we meditate, that we are connecting with that source. We're connecting with that light. And as we do so, it fills the entire body. When the eye is sound, the whole body is filled with light. Now, there are so many different forms of meditation. It's like going to a grocery store and picking out your brand, right? I mean, there's TM, which is the Maharishi Mahesh. There is Vipassana meditation. There's guided visualization. There is mantra. There's heart math, watching the breath. I mean, there's lots of meditations that are out there, and each practice is a way to control the mind, right? So the purpose of a mantra, for instance, is to give your mind something to do. It's called monkey mind, where your mind just goes running all over the place, you know? And so like when you have a mantra, it's like giving a monkey a tree that it can run up and down on. And then meanwhile, you're focusing. The monkey mind is running up and down the tree. Don Harris, who's a radio personality, said it this way about meditation. He said, as soon as you try to do this, in other words, get quiet, your mind is going to go bonkers. You're going to start thinking about what's for lunch? Do I need a haircut? Where do gerbils run wild? You're going to notice, my mind is going crazy right now. And that noticing is the key moment. In fact, it's the victory. It's interesting because this is where most people think they have failed. And I can't meditate because I can't clear my mind. It's the biggest misconception about meditation. You do not need to clear your mind. That is impossible unless you are enlightened or dead. The whole goal is just to notice. When you've become distracted, you start again. You return your attention to your breath, and you do that 1,000,000 times. And every time you catch yourself wandering, you go back to your breath or you go back to your mantra. And it's a bicep curl for your brain because it changes your brain. Anybody have that experience where you've noticed that in your life? Absolutely. It's a bicep curl for your brain. I, a couple years ago, went on a 10-day Vipassana retreat. And boy, that was a lot of sitting and a lot of silence. We were silent for 10 whole days, not allowed to read, talk to one another, look at one another, touch one another. And it was quite a challenge. I remember standing in line. We ate at 11 o'clock in the morning. That was our one meal for the day. So there was no distraction. And I know that when I went into the bathroom, it was like, you know, my roommate had a bottle of shampoo, and I had to read the bottle from top to bottom because I wanted something to do with my mind. And we weren't allowed to sweep or to clean. It was really all just meditating, and we were only allowed to walk like for an hour a day in a circle. It was quite intense. It was very intense. And the whole purpose of it was all about watching the breath and bringing the breath as we progressed from the top of the head, down through the arms, down through the body, down through the feet, back up again, up and out, back down again, up and out. And that's what we did over and over again for 10 days. And the purpose of it was that if you are sitting, chances are you're going to be in pain, right? Your hip's going to hurt, your foot's going to fall asleep, something's going to hurt. And their whole thing was, don't stop and don't move. Just notice the pain, move on. Come back, notice, move on. Just keep moving on, just keep moving on, just keep moving on. Even if you find a real pleasant sensation, like, whoa, I'm having a pleasant sensation in the top of my head, move on. Do not attach to anything. And the result is that when we're in life and we get all sticky and we get all in our lives, that we have had this practice of letting go, that we can let go, right? You can let go. You don't have to buy into the drama. You can let things move through you in your life. And is life not all about change? I mean, look in the mirror, you know, right? It's like, how often do you see your face change? Your body is changing. And so part of the process of meditation is to stop and go, I'm going to connect with that one unchanging principle that dwells within me. So when I was researching this, I found a bunch of celebrities who also meditate. And so I thought it was interesting to hear what they had to say. So Hugh Jackman said this. He said, it's not just about finding quiet. It's finding bliss, and that is natural. That's for everybody. You see it in babies. And we somehow forget. It's a different experience every time, but I get a glimpse of something that energizes me on a deep level that now I'm not sure exactly what I would do without this form of prayer, because it's a way to be in touch with who I really am. Curtis Jackson, otherwise known as 50 Cent, said this: "It helps me because it puts me in a conscious space. And before I do it, I ask myself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" Arianna Huffington, "It's just a reminder that underneath all our comings and goings, our successes and our failures, that there's a deeper dimension to life, and we can tap into it and show up from that place which is wiser, more joyful, and more compassionate." Kobe Bryant, "If I don't do it, I feel like I'm constantly chasing the day as opposed to being able to control and dictate the day. Not that you're calling the shots on what comes forward, but the fact that I am set and ready for whatever may come my way. I have a calmness about whatever comes my way, and a poise that comes from starting the morning with meditation." So you get the idea, and I think that they have said it very well. So I know that we spent, about 5 minutes in silence, and thank you, Andrea, for the gong and for the sound. But I would like just to take 3 minutes together to practice the I am that I am mantra, because that's pretty simple. I am that I am is God's name, yeah? So, and remember what Don said about it's not that you have a totally clear, calm mind. It's that you notice that you don't, and you bring it back. So I'd like for you to just kind of settle into a place of receiving, of meditation, however that works for you. And silently, I would like you to repeat, I am, let's say it aloud a couple of times, and then we'll go into silence. I am that I am. 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 And just continue silently and just watch. And then I invite you simply to come back. So again, it's about the noticing. It's about the noticing of how you were able to keep it going. And if you lost the thread, to pick the thread up again, lose the thread, pick the thread up again, lose the thread, pick up the thread again. Again, Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. And a city set on a hill cannot be hid. So let your light so shine that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." So whether it's meditating or whether it's act of kindness, may we be more than 1%. May we be 5%, or 10%. Imagine that. A simple act of caring creates an endless ripple. So I just want to close with a short story. It's a Chinese story, and a little girl was wanting to buy a cake for her grandfather for his birthday. And so her grandmother, let her get the cake. They go to the register, and the cake is $20, and they don't have enough money. And she said, "I'm sorry, honey, we can't get this cake. We can get it some other time." So they put the cake aside. Well, there's a man in line standing behind them. So after the grandmother and the little girl step outside, he buys the cake and he takes it outside and he hands it to the little girl. And the grandmother says, "We can't accept this from you." And he said, "Please let me give this to you." And she said, "Well, let me have your contact information so that I can pay you when I have the money." And he said, he says to the little girl, he said, "I want you to promise me one thing. I want you to promise me that when you can do something kind and a good act for someone else, that you'll do it. Will you promise me that?" And she said, "Yes, I will." Because when he was a little boy, he was buying a cake. His mother was letting him pick out a cake for his birthday, and they didn't have enough money. And a middle-aged gentleman bought him the cake. And the same thing, the mother said, "I can't accept this." And he goes, "Please, let me give this to him." And he gave him a note and said, "Here's my contact information, and you can pay me back whenever you get around to it. It's fine." So the little girl goes home and she gives the cake to her grandfather. And he says, "Thank you." But he looks at his wife and he says, "What are you doing? We can't afford a cake like this." And she said, "We didn't pay for it. A kind gentleman bought it, and he gave us this note." And it was the same note that he had given a little boy 30 years before, which said, "A simple act of caring creates an endless ripple." So it had come back to him full circle. And the truth is that when we do an act of kindness, whether we say a prayer, we take time to meditate, we create a ripple of an endless act of kindness, an endless ripple that goes forth. So I invite you to join with us this summer as we put into practice meditation, where we put it to the test. And if you'd like to talk to Troy, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk with you. Whether you can give 10 minutes, 20 minutes, once or twice a day, recognize that it's not just going to benefit you, that it's going to benefit all people. Because life is always changing. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not, sometimes we're healthy, sometimes we're not. But it doesn't matter. What's underneath is that divine presence that is always, always with us. So happy meditating.